And for the final arrangement game of the day, it's going to be Dig Dug arrangement. I forgot if I put my laptop into sleep mode, that breaks the capture card. I have to deactivate it and reactivate it. Off to a great start. Did not eat my or read my input there. Oh yeah, and I forgot having to play this with either the control stick or the Xbox D-pad. I didn't remember the rocks could kill you. But yeah, this game is very much just kind of Dig Dug. I forgot the timer. Level 1 was just a warm-up. But yeah, it's just you go through and you kill every enemy. The main difference, though, between this arrangement game and a lot of the others is this game's actually going to have multiple boss fights. Both Pac-Man arrangement and Galaga arrangement only had one boss fight each. This game's going to have multiple boss fights. It's like 3 or 4, I think. I want to say it's 3 at least. It's at least 3. There might be a 4th one I'm forgetting. This one definitely seems like it's the most expansive of the 3. Because there are many different worlds. There's this whole world map, different power-ups, more bosses. But if they weren't all teleporting, that would have been a really good play. But I feel like this one is the most they tried to make this instead of a like arcade remix, a remix of the arcade games. This is the most it feels like it's supposed to be a game you do actually beat. And it's more of an adventure than merely an arcade game. But I still feel like Pac-Man Arrangement had the most things unique to it compared to other Pac-Man games. Mostly in, the different types of ghosts you have, that type of having the ghosts mix so they get powered up. I don't think is in any other Pac-Man game. You had the level gimmicks, which some of them are in later Pac-Man games, like the dash panels are in a lot of the Pac-Man games. And do return in the remake of Arrangement. Though the ghost mixing doesn't return in the remix of Arrangement. It's just all the different maze themes and everything. To me, it feels like Pac-Man Arrangement was the most unique of the 3. This one feels the most expansive of the 3, and then Galaga Arrangement's kind of just Galaga. But this game still, plays like the other arrangement games. If you get a game over, you just... I didn't know that would kill me. Okay. Good to know. But if you get a game over, you just continue. The enemies can run away like they could in the original Dig Dug. And yeah, you kind of just play through the game, and eventually it ends. And again, I do think this is going to be the longest of the 3. It's still not going to be that long. I mean, I think time-wise, I think this one is about the length of the remake of Pac-Man Arrangement. So it's not necessarily that long. It's still going to be less than an hour, I'm pretty sure. Again, around 45 minutes, whereas Pac-Man Arrangement was less than 15, and Galaga Arrangement was less than 30. This is going to be more around 45 minutes, I think. But there's nothing that's going to be too challenging in the game, nothing that's going to be too lengthy. And I do like how the game's pace is very similar to original Dig Dug. Because again, the remake of this arrangement, I'd have to play it again, because I didn't play too much of it. But I remember it just being so slow and so boring. How do you do this? Is this just a... wait for all the guys? Like, getting the gun, I forgot about that power-up. Yeah, that just kills them instantly, so you don't have to hit them 3 times. No, he's running away. Not much I can do about that. I did want to see, though, if possible. No, it is just to wait for them to show up. That's interesting. At least they made it to where they do show up pretty quickly. But yeah, this is the first boss. Given that this is the third one on the menu, like, if once you boot up the game, when you boot up Namco Museum after you get past the main menu, or the title screen rather, it starts you on Pac-Man, and then if you go to the right once, it takes you to Galaga. Go right again, takes you to Dig Dug. And then it takes you to Pole Position, which there is no Pole Position arrangement. Which is kind of a shame, but I need to see... can you beat Pole Position? That's just a racing game, and maybe you can. If you can, that would... I mean, I don't know how difficult it would be. It is an arcade game, so they did want... back in the day, they would want you to... you know, spend money getting credits and stuff. And a lot of times when they port these, you kind of can't get more credits. So if you get too many game overs, you just lose. I don't know if that's like how it was in the original arcade game or just how they made it in a lot of ports. But if you can just, you know, keep continuing, then surely Pole Position shouldn't be that long. Or a game like Pole Position. I don't know how many of those games you can beat. Because there are a lot of those arcade racing games. There's like Outrun, Super Hang-On, Pole Position. I don't know how many of those you can beat, though. Yeah, and then there's a few other menus. There's like... because you can get Pac Attack, Pac-Mania, Ms. Pac-Man, Galaxian. Not that those games are super relevant, but I completely forgot about my point there. But since Dig Dug is the third on the menu, if you were playing all the arrangement games in order like I am, you probably get to Dig Dug as the third one. And so if you had already beaten Pac-Man Arrangement and Galaga arrangement. Once you get to level 12 in this game and you see that first boss, you probably think that's the end of the game. I'd be a bit surprising that it just keeps going. Although with arcade games, I do think that is where, or just any game that can be kind of infinite. I don't know that I would really say you can beat those games. Some people will define beating an arcade game as just beating one loop of the game. Right, because all the games loop, or a lot of arcade games, they end up looping. So they'll have, like, say, 15 levels, and then when you beat level 15, the game just loops, and you start back at level 1. Maybe it's a little harder. I forgot about a lot of these power-ups. Yeah, maybe the game's a little harder the second loop, or faster, or whatever, but you've beaten all the levels. But I don't know if I want to add that, or count that. If so, there would be some pretty short games. Pac-Mania is pretty short, especially the Genesis version. If you include that, you could possibly define... I don't know, I guess there are different definitions people have of how you actually beat an arcade game. So some people will say, like, for Pac-Man, you could just beat level, I think, 9? Because that's the last cutscene. So at that point, that's when the game kind of stops being... That's when it becomes infinite. You know, but I feel like if a game is designed to be infinite, I don't think you can really... If it's designed to where you're not supposed to be able to beat it and it's just supposed to be infinite, then I don't know that you can really define that there is a way to beat it. And especially, I don't think one loop satisfies every game, because Pac-Mania on Genesis actually doesn't... You don't play all the levels in the first loop. There's different levels that you can only play the second loop and onwards. So would you define that you can beat it on the first loop, and then maybe the second loop's like 100%? Or do you have to beat 2 loops? Alright, at least I got that guy. I kind of wanted to hit the Puka, though, because those Pukas can take a bit to... actually defeat. So I don't necessarily know what I would define for different arcade games. And I don't know that any definition of a lot of arcade games really fit. Like, I don't know that I necessarily agree that those definitions should count for this challenge. But maybe. I don't know if I will necessarily... If I end up thinking of something and, like, it's concrete, this is how I want to approach it, I will do that. But I actually... What I don't want to do is I don't want to get to the point to where I've ran out of short games. And so now all of a sudden, arcade games are going to count. Because I need more short games, you know? I would rather be forced to do long games that fit my definition of beating games and what's going to make a satisfying challenge for me, rather than just change the definition So I can do a bunch of really short games. But it's not even just infinite games, it's also games that don't necessarily have a defined end. How can you define an ending? Is it possible to define an ending for it? Like, how would you say you beat, say, like, Wii Sports? Like, I don't know that you really can. What would that be? Would that be getting pro on all the sports? Would it be just beating every sport once? And then I think it gets even harder if you get to like Wii Sports Resort. Because there are some game modes you can technically beat. You can beat Island Flyover if you get all the I points. You can beat Sword Showdown. By beating all the levels. But would you have to do just one of those? Would you have to do both of them? What about the other sports you can't beat? Would you still have to beat those? I don't know. I think that gets especially hard for Wii Play. Because the game, if you boot up the game with no save data at all, the game will make you play each game once. Because each game kind of is going over the pointer controls. And so each game has kind of a different way of using the pointer. Or, like, some sort of motion controls, you know? The first game is target practice. The second game is you have to search and make sure you're hitting the right thing. Pose Me is you're twisting the character around. And Laser Hockey's also about twist controls. So you maybe could argue that just beating Wii Play is beating every game once. Because that's what the kind of the game presents it as to start. But then what about the games that you can beat? You can actually beat Find Me. There's a finite number of levels to Find Me. You can beat Pose Me. There's a finite number of levels in Pose Me. You can beat Tanks. There's a finite number of levels in Tanks. So would that be beat every game mode then? That might be a satisfying definition, actually. Just beat every game mode. Because you could do that. You could, even though some of them would just be play them once. Like, the only way to beat Shooting Range is... I'm going to plug in my laptop real quick. Luckily, the cord's good, because I didn't mess with a bunch of cables. There we go. But... like, for Shooting Gallery, it's just one level. Well, it's 5 levels, but you play them all in a row. It's very short, but you do beat Shooting Range in that way. And then Ping Pong, you wouldn't have to get to the 999 rally, because the game starts with your initial objective is just to rally 100. Find Me has an actual end You have to beat all 99 levels to win. Tanks has a finite number of levels. Pose Me has a finite number of levels. Then fishing is just a timed mode. You just play till you win. Billiards, you just play till you win. And it doesn't matter your score. At the end, you just have to sink all the balls. I'm forgetting a game mode in Wii Play. Power Racing, Charge. That you just get to the end. Okay, I think that's a satisfying definition. You have to beat every game mode, because every game mode does have an end. And then you could define Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort in that way too, where you have to beat every game mode. And then that would even go through other types, similar games, like Clubhouse games, Wii Fit, things of that nature. And so I would say for Wii Sports, would it be going pro, or would it be beating the champion? Is there a champion in each game mode in original Wii Sports? I know there are in a lot of the game modes in Wii Sports Resort, but I don't know if there is in original Wii Sports. Because with that definition, Wii Sports, the original, might be the only actually viable one, even if the definition is going pro in all of the games. Because going pro isn't that hard. Oh yeah, because there wouldn't be a champion in bowling. You would just have to go pro. And there's not one in golf either. So even going pro, it's just playing the games over and over. I don't think it would be that hard in original Wii Sports. Wii Sports Resort definitely would get really, really difficult because there are a lot of levels in Sword Fight Duel. There's a lot of eye points in Island Flyover. And then getting pro on every game in Wii Sports Resort. There's a lot of games in that game. So I don't know that Wii Sports Resort is viable because of how long it is. And then really the only thing that makes Wii Play not viable is just how hard Tanks is. I have never beaten Tanks. It's the only game mode I've never beaten in that sense. Because I have beaten Pose Me, I've beaten Find Me many times. So I could do those pretty easily, it's just I don't think I can do Tanks. And then I'd have to look into Wii Fit to see if that would be any sort of viable. Seems like it could be. I don't know if there are any games that have like super long ways to win. I mean, there's Obstacle Course. Oh, but would you have to do every difficulty in Wii Fit is the thing, I guess. That would be interesting. So I don't know about any of them except original Wii Sports. And then I'd also have to look into Wii Party, because would that be beat every game mode? Because you have not only the board game island thing, but then there's also like the some of the minigame ones, the like balance one. I don't know really what the definition of that would be. Definitely would be worth looking into some of those games and seeing what I think of would make a satisfying definition. Because yeah, when you get down to it, most of those games are you're just kind of supposed to play them infinitely, just play them for fun. But there's a finite end to all of them. There's a definitive, this is the end of the game. You know, Shooting Gallery ends when you've completed all the levels. Fishing ends when the time is up. It's not like Pac-Man to where the game only truly ends when you get to level 256 because the game just can't process anymore. Because I think for the intention of the original Pac-Man, I think they intended it to be infinite. I don't think they intended for there to be an end to the game. I also have no idea what the hurry up means. It doesn't seem like it's affecting anything, though. But in all of the games in Wii Play, there is a definitive endpoint. In Wii Sports, you can always say there's a definitive endpoint because going pro is kind of the ultimate goal of each game. I don't know. I would have to. That would be. Those types of games are definitely a case by case basis. I don't know that the one loop or anything like that for arcade games really is a satisfying definition for me. But in a game that's just a collection of games where each game has a finite end, I think that getting to that defined endpoint would be a satisfying conclusion. And that's even just to say that I would define an ending for each game. That doesn't mean that any of them are necessarily viable. Again, I don't think Wii Play is viable because of tanks. I don't think Wii Sports Resort is viable because there's just a ton of games in that game. And how long is each game going to take? If each game takes at least an hour, you're looking at maybe 20 hours to beat every game. It probably wouldn't be that long, but could be. And then, like, Clubhouse Games 51 Worldwide Classics, I don't know that that's viable because I do not know how to play Shogi. And a defined endpoint would be beating Shogi, because I wouldn't say that you can lose in Shogi and that would count, because that's not beating the game. The only time I would define a game as to where you could lose and still beat the game is if the game, like, It's specifically designed to let you do that. One of the other games I'm going to do, which actually I should probably do today because it's insanely short, but there is a Winnie the Pooh game on Game Boy Color that you do not have to win any of the levels. You can lose every level and you can still get to the end of the game. And that's because that's the defined endpoint of the game. So the definition of beating the game would be get to the end of the game. But in a game like Wii Sports, I've defined beating the game as beating every game, not losing every game, but you technically got to the end of the game. You know? I wouldn't get to the final level in this game and then lose and say I completed the game because I got to the final level and the level technically ended because I lost, you know? That's not a good resolution unless the game allows for that resolution, which that Winnie the Pooh game does. But in standard definition of how to beat a video game, losing in a game does not satisfy that definition. Now, if it was something like Shooting Range in Wii Play, you wouldn't necessarily have to get any score, because the definition of beating Shooting Range is not get a really good score. It is complete the level, complete the game. And to complete the game, you just have to wait. You don't have to get any score at all if you didn't want to. Because I think the game will just end on its own. It's pretty much an auto-scroller. Or an on-rail shooter, rather. So if you didn't do anything in Shooting Gallery, I would say you do still win, but if you were to play, say, shogi or chess in Clubhouse Games, I would define it as you do have to beat the game. You have to win in order to win. You can't lose and say you won just because you finished the game. And then again, that also is going to go into how far does that definition really go? Like, can I win a game of Counter-Strike and say I beat Counter-Strike? I don't think that really fits. But yeah, definition for, beating a game, obviously it's going to be somewhat arbitrary just to how I feel. It may not be a definition that literally everyone agrees to with some games. And I could always just do games that do have a traditional final boss and ending and, limit it to that, but I feel like if you limit it to that, it kind of limits a lot of what you can do. And I don't think it's really a satisfying definition to limit it that much. Because the thing about the challenge is to find what are these short games I can do. And if I limit it so much to where there's only a handful of games I can do, that's not going to be a fun challenge. It's going to feel very limited. I think for some games, defining it as get the credits can definitely be a satisfying resolution. Because a lot of games do have it to where getting the credits is kind of the end of the game. Pac-Man World Rally, if you beat every cup, you get the credits. It's actually only if you beat the Rally Cup you get the credits, and that's consistent throughout the game. anytime you beat the Rally Cup, you will get the credits, but you can't define it as you have to just beat the Rally Cup, because if you were to play the game for the first time, you wouldn't start with the Rally Cup. You would have to beat every cup first. Before you could even unlock the Rally Cup. So you would have to beat every cup, because that's the game's definition of beating the game, you know? And I think that's a satisfying definition for pretty much any racing game. Is just beat every cup, because that's the content of the game. And again, it's beating every cup, not losing in every cup. But then again, that only works for some racing games. And it's going to be something that is the definition is going to vary from game to game. It's going to depend on the game and how that game handles things. Because any racing game that has a story mode, I wouldn't say you can just beat every cup and that's beating the game if the game has a legitimate mode that says complete this to beat the game, you know? So in Pac-Man World Rally, I would say just beat every cup. You know, Mario Kart Wii M would probably say beat every cup. Especially because you do get kind of an end in Mario Kart Wii if you do that. But Sonic Riders, I would not say that you could just beat every cup, especially because I don't think Sonic Riders has cups. I think it just has all the races, but you wouldn't be able just to beat every race because there is a dedicated story mode. So I would say you have to beat that story mode in order to beat the game. And so then the Kirby Air Ride games are actually pretty interesting because I think those actually have two different definitions of beating the game. Because Kirby Air Riders, the new one, does have a dedicated story mode with Road Trip. So I would say just beat Road Trip beats Kirby Air Riders. But the original Kirby Air Ride doesn't have a dedicated story mode like that. But I also wouldn't say you could just beat every race in Air Ride, beat every race in Top Ride, and do City Trial once. Because the game actually does give you credits for getting 100. Oh, that's it? Okay, that was a very abrupt ending. But you get credits in Kirby Air Ride for getting 100 checkboxes in each game mode. So I would define beating Kirby Air Ride as you would have to get 100 checkboxes in each game mode, which makes it definitely a way longer definition than just beating Road Trip. So, again, what the definition of beating a game is, how you beat it, what's a satisfying goal, what's a satisfying game to even play that would count. It's all going to depend, and I'm going to figure it out as I go. But for right now, I am focusing on the games that I do know a satisfying definition and know are really short. And then maybe later when I get to games that are like, all right, some of these are pretty long, but maybe this game would be shorter. Is there a satisfying conclusion? Or is it like, I think of We Play and I think, oh, We Play maybe could be because you think that's a short game. And then you remember Tanks is actually really freaking long. And if you game over, that's it. You lose. You have to restart, you know? So It's gonna be interesting. I'm gonna have to think a lot about it and see what happens and what games are satisfying. But yeah, only slightly longer per arrangement game. 15 minutes for Pac-Man arrangement, 30 for Galaga arrangement, and then 37, so less than 40 minutes for Dig Dug arrangement. And again, I even think the remake of Pac-Man arrangement is longer than this. So probably Galaga arrangement and the other Dig Dug arrangement are going to be longer, and probably Rally X uh, arrangement as well. But those will have to be for later because I have to set up PSP stuff before I can do those. So yeah, that's 3 games beaten so far today.